Okay, non-judgmentally. They validate what you're saying. You say to me, I'm really hurting, and I say, oh, you shouldn't hurt.
Thanks.
Like, no, why don't you look on the bright side, right? That's not helpful. Or, you ought to be more spiritual. Where's your faith, right? Okay. So somebody who listens well, is accepting, validates what they're hearing, validates your emotion, encourages you, but mostly listens and is there for you, right? And sees you through grace-filled eyes. They're not sitting there going, "You slime." And they see in you potential, but they don't necessarily go there. They're with you, right? They're with you. That's the key.
I work at
Well, I'm sorry. Can I just, because I'm on a roll just for a second, but we'll come back. Because I want to make a point, though. How do you treat yourself? Let me go back. How do you treat yourself when you're struggling with a problem? What kind of self-talk do you engage in?
It's not always positive.
Sorry?
It's not always positive, myself talking to myself.
Like, give an example of what's not so positive.
You're not good enough.
You're not good enough.
Get over it.
Get over it.
Suck it up.
Suck it up. You're no good. Why aren't you more spiritual? You don't have what it takes, right? We have all those that kind of stuff. Now, that's why I asked this question. Should you be different for yourself than somebody who comes alongside and helps you is? I think this is a really, really important question. Because I believe most of us engage in a lot of negative stuff with ourselves. We don't use grace-filled eyes with ourselves. We condemn ourselves. So you have and by the way, I hope you're not going to go out and go, he's talking psychobabble here. I'm not. You have a relationship with yourself. Have you ever thought of this? You have a relationship with yourself. You have a relationship with God and others and yourself. You have a view of yourself. Counselors call that your internal model, your internal working model. That's that's psychobabble speak right there. But basically, how you see yourself. And you engage in self-talk. I will never forget, I was married. Back when I was 20 years old, my wife had an affair and left me. And I was just devastated. And I decided, I was a teacher, and I thought maybe I'll go to law school. And my neighbor was a lawyer. And he said, yeah, I just want you to read this thing. I'll give you a legal document so you can read it, and you can just see what it's like, some of the stuff we do. So I started to read this legal document, and as I'm reading it, it had all this legal mumbo-jumbo that I couldn't understand, and I started crying and hating I said, you stink, you're so stupid, you don't know this. And that, of course, why should I have known any of that? I hadn't been to law school. But you see, my self-talk was, you're stupid. You're no good. You don't have what it takes. You're not smart enough. What? In part because she left me, but also it revealed a lot of my negativity. So my point is, you have the way you see yourself, the way you engage in self-talk, and the way you treat yourself. How do you treat yourself? I had a client who he would never do anything good for himself. His wife was leaving him. And one of the things I asked him to do, he would bring me Wawa. Do you guys have Wawa out here? You guys think, what the heck is Wawa? It's a coffee place. He would bring me Wawa coffee. We'd have morning sessions. So one time I said, why don't you pick yourself up a cup of coffee? He goes, I don't need it. I said, well, wait. Do you like coffee? Oh, yeah. Well, why don't you get yourself a cup of coffee? Well, I really don't need it. So my assignment to him was, every time you come in here, you're buying yourself a cup of coffee. And then part of what we talked about was how hard it was for him to do that. See? just a small thing like that, the way he treated himself. So my point is it possible for you to become the person that you like to go to when you're in trouble or have pain? That's a prerequisite for what I want to do. Oh, one other thing. Validation. Important piece. Validation is how you handle someone. Do you validate what they're saying or do you not validate? So for example, a validating statement might be, sounds like you went through a horrible experience. Right? I'm here for you. Invalidating statement would be, oh, I think you're being too sensitive. You need to toughen up. Talking about when someone pours their heart out to you and shares something, right? So I gave these examples. We don't have to go through them, but I gave them in your handout there just to see the examples of validating statements. So what I want to do now is walk you through this idea, and I call this the grace-filled eyes of Christ, as a way of handling your own emotions, okay? And what you're going through. All right. So we start with emotional pain, whatever it is. You have a loss in your life, you're anxious, you're sad, you're angry, you're lonely, you're bitter, whatever it is. So the grace-filled, the first step is to acknowledge what it is that you're feeling. Not cut off. Many of us are cut off. That's why I went through these exercises with you. So you acknowledge what you're feeling. Now look at this psalm. It's an example of acknowledgement. I think I have it in red. Look at these. Look at the language that, I think it was David. Be gracious to me. I'm languishing. I'm troubled. How long? I'm weary. I'm moaning. I have tears. I weep. I'm wasting away. I've got grief. I'm weak. Okay? Now there's a guy who's in touch with what he's experiencing, and he's acknowledging what he is feeling. So that's why the first step here is to acknowledge what I'm feeling. This is important. So important. Most of us stop right here and we go, why should I enter into that? That's not having faith in Jesus. I need to have more courage. I need to just do this. I need to do that. And you become the person who is not the good listener. So it's a great exercise and a great skill to develop is to acknowledge what it is I'm feeling. Okay. Now, after I've acknowledged it, this is the harder part, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to enter into my emotion. So if I'm angry, I'm going to enter into it. I'm going to feel it. If I'm sad, if I'm lonely, what does that feel like? So that's the question. What am I feeling? And where am I feeling it? Where in my body am I experiencing loneliness? Is it in my chest? Is it in my gut? Is it in my neck? Where do I feel it? God made you as a whole person. Body, soul, spirit. Body. Where am I feeling this? You're not disconnected. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it now? Secondly, stay in the emotion. I'm feeling it. I'm acknowledging it. I'm feeling it. I'm staying there. Now you're going, Dave, now you're pushing me. Like, why should I stay in my loneliness? Because it stinks. I hate it. I don't want it. This is where we distract ourselves. And our distractions become so automatic that what we do, it's knee-jerk. I feel something, boom, I'm not feeling it. I'm going to cut it off. And I'm going to distract. I'm going to go to the refrigerator. I'm going to go do something else, right? No. You want to stay here and validate what you're feeling. I'm feeling lonely right now. I'm feeling sad right now. And then invite Jesus to be with you in the feeling, in the emotion. We bypass all this stuff. We just want to go right to Philippians. We just want to go right to the victory, right? Triumph. And what you want to do now, and I'll get into this a lot more in the next section. Identify what you're longing for in the emotion. What am I longing for right now? What do I want? I want relief. I want love. I want to be affirmed. And understand the longing that you have is godly and good. He made you with longings. Right? You'd be a fool not to want to be loved or affirmed or be, admired or whatever it is you're looking for. But you do it in the presence of Christ. And you can go to him and say, Lord, I'm longing for this. I hurt right now. And I'd really, really like to feel better. Right? So you know what you're doing here? You're cultivating intimacy with Christ. And you're not disconnecting from yourself. And you're able to start to see yourself through the grace-filled eyes of Christ. And I will just tell you, just as a personal testimony, as one who is a hard ass on myself, excuse me, that's probably one of the most life-changing truths that I've ever experienced, is to start to see myself through the grace-filled eyes of Christ and not through the condemning eyes of Dave. I want to come back to you for just a moment, because you said something like, what did you say before? I said, I really want to talk to you about that. When you said, I shouldn't. I'm too introspective. And I'm not supposed to be introspective. Right? And so sometimes introspection can be a really, really good thing. We're being introspective right here. But it's not for the purpose of self-absorption alone or magnifying myself. It's for the purpose of cultivating intimacy with Christ and understanding myself. If you don't understand yourself, you're going to be in a heap of trouble. You got to understand your stuff, your own tendencies, your own inadequacies, right? And identify what it is you're longing for. And if you're longing for something you can't have, you have to grieve it. It's grief. Please.
Isn't it just fantastic that God has allowed both David and Paul to be introspective to show us how he is?
Yes. Did you all hear that?
Yeah. Don't forget Christ.
What'd you say?
Don't forget Christ.
Well, yes, that's right. That's right. But you're so right. So David was introspective. Paul was introspective. Jesus was introspective. Yeah. Yeah. How many think you're supposed to be compassionate for other people? Is that a godly trait? How can you be compassionate with other people if you can't be compassionate for yourself? How can you do that? Right? Somewhere we've gotten this idea that, well, I'm going to be too soft on myself. No, the doctrine of depravity already takes care of that. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
You were talking about something earlier that goes with what you just said, how it says that we're supposed to love others
Yeah.
as ourselves.
Right.
And if we don't love ourselves,
Right.
how can we really love others?
Right. Right. And how do we take loving ourselves from just something we say to something we actually know how to do? And so that's part of the point here, is to be able to stay in what you're feeling and not have a knee-jerk reaction to medicate. That's hard, because who in the world wants to stay in pain? But I'm saying stay in pain. You can stay in pain. And you can invite Jesus to be with you in the pain, cultivate intimacy with him. Wrong way here. Okay. And when you can identify this, you can satisfy what you're longing for in a healthy way by pursuing God. And again, I don't want to get too far into this, because I'll unpack this a little bit more. So sometimes when you're hurting so badly and you pray, God comes miraculously and you experience his peace. Have you ever experienced that? Okay. Do you experience it every time? I don't. Sometimes I feel completely, no, he's not with me. but I know by faith he is with me. So the point is, either when you go to him in your struggle and in your need, you may feel fulfilled by God in a beautiful way, or not. You still may hurt, but you can trust God's working in your heart to accomplish what he is doing in your heart, to get at the areas of your life that he needs to get into and conform you to the image of Christ. That's part of the process of sanctification, right? I'm becoming like Christ. Sometimes it's through suffering, not through pain relief. Does that make sense? Excuse me. So the overall thing here is A, I'm cultivating intimacy with Christ. B, I'm seeing myself through the grace-filled eyes of Christ. So when I am let me see what my next slide is. Yeah, okay. So what I can do is I can rely on Christ, and I can be there for myself and not be the agent who is condemning. But I can be like the friend that you love, the counselor you like to go to, and I can validate, I can hear myself, I can say, hey, you know what? You are hurting, and it's okay. By the way, here's a great sentence to say to yourself. It makes sense that you're hurting. It makes sense. You know, sometimes we don't know why we're hurting. Or if we do, we minimize it, you know. My friend, Jim Rhodes, the man here on the cover here, he died last week after 8 years of metastatic cancer. I'm missing his burial tomorrow. But the point is, I'm sad about that. And if I'm sad, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm thinking of him and I'm sad, I don't have to go, oh, but he's in heaven, which is true. I can also say, he's in heaven and I really miss him. And it makes sense that I'm sad, right? And if somebody does you wrong, it makes sense you're angry. Don't bypass anger just because you think you're supposed to get through it so quickly. Just like we don't bypass grief because you think you have to get through it so quickly. All right, I'm going to land the plane here, but I want to do one more thing. In addition to everything that I'm talking about, the importance of community can't be underestimated. So you share your story with an empathetic listener. Don't isolate. It helps you organize what your thoughts are and what you're feeling. And it fosters, talking with somebody who can validate and listen, fosters emotional regulation. It de-escalates intense emotion. And it helps you make sense of your story. One of the key things that I think Christians need to do is make sense of the story they have. What have you been through from birth to now? What have you been through? What is your story in particularity so you can handle the traumas, the injustices, and the good things that have happened to you in a way that is just, now you go, oh, there's the inside story, there's the outside story, but here's the larger story in God's plan, in God's picture. So that, yes, I did go through this experience, by the way, where my wife left me, had an affair with a friend of mine, and I was brokenhearted. And isn't it interesting that he works all things together for good? He uses that pain. And isn't it interesting that I ended up being a counselor, and I work with a lot of people who've been through that experience? That's an interesting turn of events, isn't it? That's a Romans 8:28 providential thing. By the way, it's not my wife that I'm married to now. I just want to be clear about that. So that's why I talk about the importance of relationships and community. We do this, all of this that I'm talking about, in the context of community, in the context of church. That's what church is about. The body of Christ. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to hear some comments or questions as we wrap up here. I just want to check my time. All right, we have a few minutes. So thoughts that you're thinking about, questions you might have.
The process, the journey.
Yeah.
Especially important part of it is, David's writings that in Psalm 22, of Jesus and David utters the words, my God, why have you forsaken
Jesus himself felt that.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
he resolved that,
Yes.
but he went through that.
Right. He didn't bypass it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Good observation. Yeah. Yeah.
Second Corinthians 1:5 says, whereas the suffering of Christ is bound in us, or that so our consolidation also abound under Christ.
Yes. Yep. So
we're
we can
so
come.
actually suffering.
I'm sorry.
As a Christian, we're to partake in his suffering.
That's right. Paul goes on to say that we can comfort those with the comfort with which we were comforted with, right? In order to be comforted, you have to be in distress.
I mean, my story for the mission is I was a drug addict. God delivered me out of it, which helps me relate to the guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who better to relate to somebody than somebody who's been there? That's the story.
Relate to you if you don't.
Right.
Who are you to tell me?
That's right.
Or help me?
Yeah, that's right. You want to say something?
We serve an amazing God. And one of the things that, because I'm old, I can say it. I've worked with the mission for 40 years. But he has been faithful to come along and reteach me over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And how great an opportunity
Yeah.
to be working in a place
Yes.
to do it. And so I think the one thing we did talk about is humor. I think God gives humor.
I like that.
And so sometimes, like I was taught strongly, and I still believe it, be anxious for nothing, but in everything. So that's the solution. But I have cancer, and my oncologist always saying to me, well, you have that because you have stress. You're anxious. And I would look at him and I say, I don't do anxiety. And I kept doing this over and over again. So I renamed it unapprehensive.
It's very funny. I'm sorry. It's not funny. I just went internal to a memory. You just gave me a memory. When I was a little kid, I was always scared at night. And I would call down to my father and I'd say, I'm scared. I'm scared. And he gave me the opposite. He said, Dave, you're not scared. You're anxious. And I'd say, okay, I'm anxious. So you're apprehensive. But if I can say, and I'm not talking about you, many of us, because it's unacceptable to be anxious, we say we're not anxious, but we actually are. And Paul did say the anxieties, he deals with the anxieties of the churches on a day-to-day basis. So it's not that anxiety is something that we're going to always avoid as we trust him. Yeah, but it's there. Let's not cover it over. Let's not just paper it over and just pretend it's not there, because that's when the buried emotions leak.
And that verse could be retranslated as, you don't have to be anxious if you will give thanks.
Give thanks, yeah, right.
Yeah, I was gonna share that very thought. One of my lifelong mentors challenges me and others in basically to whatever challenge, whatever trial we might be going through, to find a place where we can thank God
Yeah.
for that.
Yes. Give him praise in all things.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. Let me close in prayer, and I'll get you out to lunch in time. Father, we are so grateful to you for your love and your faithfulness to us. We look to you for all things, even the breath of life. Pray, Father, for your blessings on each person here. Pray that you'd help us walk with you in truth and honesty, integrity, and empower us as we continue to minister to other people. Help us to be able to cultivate intimacy with you and know you more. And thank you again for your